The world's greatest injustice, apart from murder, is taxation, and there is an argument that could be made that taxation is a greater evil than murder, for at its worst it can take everything from you, even life. Taxation is evil because no one can claim a right to take from you what you earned or created. Some may begin to argue their point, but if they succeed in convincing all of us that taxation can and is justified, they lose all rights, even to life. If you can find a way to legitimize taxation, then everything becomes permissible and there are no objective limits to what others can do. However, this is basically where we already are. That the state does not subtract everything from us is not because they think taxation is wrong, or that there is a hard and fast limit on the amount of taxes they can extract. It is for purely pragmatic reasons why the government leaves you with any money from your paycheck. If the state can justify the extraction of $1 from your income, it can justify taking $2, and if can justify taking more, it can justify taking everything. That is not because it lacks a philosophical basis. The constraints governments are under are logical, nor moral. If the government took everything, it would erase its support. Not only does this betray a fundamental weakness of government, it points to a fundamental flaw in the conception of government. The concept of government is both ancient and deeply ingrained in the psyche of human society, yet the nature and role of government continues to be a subject of debate. Governments are established to exercise authority and control over a defined territory and its population. Their primary functions include maintaining order, providing public services, ensuring security, and regulating economic and social interactions. However, the legitimacy and moral foundation of these functions, particularly taxation, often ignite significant controversy. Governments arise from the social contract theory, where individuals collectively agree to form an organized society by surrendering certain freedoms in exchange for protection and stability. This contract is grounded in the belief that a central authority is necessary to prevent the chaos of a state of nature, where life, as Thomas Hobbes famously described, would be solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. Despite this foundational premise, the nature of government is multifaceted and varies across different political systems. At one end of the spectrum are democratic governments, where power is derived from the consent of the governed and exercised through representatives chosen by the people. At the other end are authoritarian regimes, where power is centralized and often maintained through coercion and limited political freedoms. Between these extremes lie various forms of governance, including constitutional monarchies, republics, and federal systems, each with unique structures and mechanisms of authority. The authority of governments is typically legitimized through constitutions, laws, and the recognition of their sovereignty by other states. Legitimacy encompasses the right to rule and the acceptance of government actions by its population. This legitimacy is often reinforced by democratic principles, such as free and fair elections, rule of law, and the protection of human rights. However, even in democratic societies, questions arise regarding the extent and limits of government authority. One of the most contentious issues is the government's power to tax. Taxation is the mechanism through which governments generate revenue to fund public services and infrastructure, ensure national security, and promote social welfare. Yet, as explored in the excerpt above, taxation is viewed by some as an infringement on individual rights and freedoms. Critics argue that it represents a forcible taking of private property without sufficient moral justification, thereby equating it with other forms of coercion and exploitation. But the problem is, government cannot do anything without engaging in taxation. Taxation is therefore the issue that is of the utmost concern. Taxation permits governments to exercise authority and fulfill their obligations, but then it leaves many asking whether or not the government is worth the cost. The services provided by governments can be broadly grouped into 5 different categories. 1. Maintaining order and security. Governments are tasked with maintaining public order and safety through the enactment and enforcement of laws. This includes the operation of police forces, judicial systems, and correctional facilities. By establishing legal frameworks and ensuring adherence to them, governments aim to protect citizens from crime, violence, and other threats to their well-being. However, the question is always asked, who polices the police? The legal system can be provided because of the taxes collected, but it is the legal system that gives the state the means to collect taxes. Which comes first, taxation or the legal system that justifies the taxation? 2. Providing public services. One of the fundamental roles of government is to provide essential public services that individuals and private entities cannot efficiently deliver on their own. These services encompass education, healthcare, transportation, sanitation, and utilities. By investing in these areas, governments enhance the quality of life and promote social equality. Yet, the government does not actually provide any of these services. They are often provided by contracted private entities or at minimum, workers hired by different departments of the government. 3. Regulating economic and social affairs. Governments play a crucial role in regulating economic activities to ensure fair competition, consumer protection, and fiscal stability. This involves setting policies on taxation, trade, labor standards, and environmental protection. Social regulation includes laws related to marriage, family, and individual rights, aiming to foster a harmonious and just society. On the other hand, the economics that the government administrates is created by governments and could not exist without government assistance. Capitalism and communism are incapable to independent existence. They are domesticated creatures incapable of an independent existence. 4. Promoting social welfare. Social welfare programs are designed to support vulnerable populations and reduce inequalities. Governments implement initiatives such as unemployment benefits, pensions, disability support, and food assistance to ensure that citizens have access to basic needs and opportunities for advancement. This makes unwarranted assumptions, because again, the state has nothing to help anyone with. It must assume the nation is composed of public resources which exist to benefit everyone equally. This is not meritocratic. It is neither logical nor moral. There is nothing that says everyone deserves equal treatment, and the only reason why this policy might exist is to give government something to do. If we are all entitled to some end, then the state has been given a purpose, and if it exists with a purpose, its existence is legitimized. Where does this policy of equal rights originate? We always look at the end result but not at the mechanisms of its achievement. Equality is ultimately a zero-sum game. One cannot excel without work, and one cannot be made equal to the results that come from work, without to some degree devaluing work. The problem with transgender females is not that they win the top prizes but that they do it without doing the work put in by biological females. It is stolen valor. The state decrees that everyone has rights, but there is no valor in this. There is no virtue, because the flip side is that others do not have certain rights. Rights are a zero-sum game because they accrue to people without work. If they are rights, they are not earned, and if they are not earned, they are acquired dishonestly. The right to life cannot be acquired without a loss of rights by those who must ensure you get the means to life. This might mean they must sacrifice their own safety or means of existence to save or succor you. Because no everyone will accede to this policy of equal rights, the state becomes the arbiter of rights, a position it, itself, has to right to. Taxes are the world's greatest injustice, but in some respect that without a sense of rights, taxation would not exist. Without a sense that a person had a right to rule or that others had right to the things the state provides, taxation would not occur. If animals had rights, where would they originate from? Do foxes claim they have a right to a certain number of rabbits? Do bears demand a den each winter as an inalienable right? If animals have no rights and no path to acquiring them, where do the rights people say they have come from? Humans are not animals, but the question remains. We do not say humans have a right to a body or digestive system. But a creature is not human unless they have a body that includes a digestive system. But if they did not have these things, where would they get them? Yet the same thing can be said about the other things it is said we have a right to. The greatest right is the right to life, and we think the right to free speech is not far behind. Yet we can lose any right, and many do lose some or all of their rights. As inalienable as we say they are, we can be alienated from them, and often are. Even the right to life ends in death, and death is something we all endure. Then what are rights? Human rights are fundamental principles that aim to protect the inherent dignity and equality of every individual. These rights are enshrined in various international declarations, such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which outlines basic freedoms and protections that all humans are entitled to, regardless of nationality, ethnicity, religion, or any other status. The right to life is paramount among human rights, as it forms the basis upon which all other rights are built. Without the guarantee of life, the enjoyment of other rights becomes meaningless. Following closely is the right to freedom of speech, which empowers individuals to express their thoughts, opinions, and beliefs without fear of repression. However, the reality is that rights can be fragile and are often subject to the whims of those in power. The enforcement of rights requires a legal and institutional framework that can be inconsistent or flawed. This is where the role of governments becomes crucial. They must establish and uphold laws that protect these rights, ensuring that justice is accessible to all citizens. Yet, governments themselves can be a source of rights violations when they overstep their authority or fail to safeguard their citizens. In exploring the origins of human rights, one must consider philosophical and ethical foundations. Some theories posit that rights are derived from natural law, a concept that suggests certain rights are inherent and universal. Others argue that rights are social constructs, created and agreed upon by societies to ensure harmony and mutual respect. The question of whether animals have rights highlights the complexity of defining and granting rights. While animals may not possess rights in the same way humans do, there is growing recognition of the need for animal welfare and protection. This underscores the principle that rights are not just about legal entitlements but also about moral considerations. In summary, human rights are vital to the functioning of a just society. They provide a framework for individuals to live with dignity, freedom, and equality. The protection and promotion of these rights require constant vigilance and commitment from all levels of society, particularly from governments, which must balance authority with the imperative to respect and uphold the rights of every individual. However, what has to be considered, if rights ultimately rely on humans to administrate them, they are simply the pawns of political agents. As such, rights are just another factor to justify governments and whatever level of taxation they can impose on us. 5. Diplomatic and international relations. On the global stage, governments engage in diplomacy to maintain peaceful and cooperative relations with other nations. This involves negotiating treaties, participating in international organizations, and addressing issues such as trade, climate change, and security. The problem with governments is that they make taxation necessary. Taxation is made necessary because governments do not provide any benefit. If they did, people would pay for that benefit. The scam government play is that they claim that someone has to rule, and it may as well be them, as the most powerful or popular choice. Democracy is nothing more than a system that permits us to pick the most popular group to rule us. But why do we need a ruler? The argument is that if we do not submit to a group who has the power to extract wealth from us and rule us, another group will do this, and they may be worse or more dictatorial. So at root, government is a protection racket. Let us rule you or bad things will happen to you. Perhaps they will, but from who? The bad things will come from those who want to rule us and take our property to make it possible. But if no one wanted to live off of our labor, if everyone was willing to work and pay their own way, what would need is there for a state? Jesus said he came for the sick, not the well. The healthy person looks after himself and does not need a physician. It is the sick who needs to put themselves under the care of a doctor. The sickness is parasitism. This is the world's greatest injustice because it takes from those who produce the wealth to give to those who only consume what others produced. Taxation is the world's most prevalent and organized form of parasitism. It is freeloaders who create the need for the state, which is the worst form of freeloading. Get rid of the freeloader and one eliminates the need for the state and taxation.